Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
An attorney uncovers new heavily redacted emails from the FBI indicating that they've been providing false testimony of their records on former DNC staffer Seth Rich, who was murdered back in 2016 in Washington, D.C. Here's One America's Caitlin Sinclair.
I think we could all agree that Seth Rich has been a name that we haven't heard in a while. Why is that?
There has been an ongoing litigation/smear campaign against anybody who asks inconvenient questions about Seth Rich. Fox News got sued. Fox News has gone completely silent on Seth Rich. And I think the message has gotten out to most other media outlets: don't talk about this or else. And I think that was their strategy all along, is to shut everybody up. And here's where it gets really interesting. So when I notified the attorney representing the FBI that we had these emails, the FBI came back and said, you know, the reason they weren't produced was because there was nothing of investigative significance. Of course, I pointed out I didn't ask for emails of investigative significance. I asked for all emails about Seth Rich. So we went back and forth with that. And then I happened to look at every time there's a FOIA redaction, they put codes next to the redaction. So I went back and looked up the codes. And one of the most common codes in there was to redact things that might reveal matters of investigative or prosecutorial significance. So mind you, they told me along there's been no investigation, but yet you're citing exemptions on the grounds that there's an investigation or potential prosecution. So which is it?
What led you to believe that they knew all along that they didn't conduct a reasonable search?
Well, just the fact that they admitted to me that there were inquiries in the Washington field office, questions were asked, and then I'm getting tips from people on the inside that absolutely there are records there. So I think they've known all along, and they just try to cover it up.
So how far up do we believe this line of corruption actually goes?
If you look at the whole Russia collusion, Ukraine, whatever, I mean, that goes straight to Obama.
Yeah.
Hillary is deeply involved. Obama himself is involved. James Comey, Clapper, Brennan, all of them are involved.
Well, hopefully we get some answers, and the American people definitely deserve to know all of this.
Absolutely.
So thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you.
Want to see more videos like this? Click.
FBI lies and attacks on the free press, the Matt Couch, Seth Rich, and Julian Assange story. Welcome to Training Tuesday again on the Rob Maness Show live on Patriot.tv and our X Spaces simulcast audience. Welcome back. The murder of Seth Rich occurred on July 10th, 2016 at about 4:20 a.m. in the Bloomingdale neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Rich died about an hour and a half after being shot in the torso. The perpetrators were never apprehended. Police suspected he might have been a victim of an attempted robbery. The 27-year-old Rich was an employee of the Democratic National Committee. Beyond these facts, the story of Seth Rich becomes completely riddled with multiple layers of what appears to be disinformation and an orchestrated deception messaging campaign from elements of the U.S. government, like you just heard from that attorney. And that clip was from 4 years ago. WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange made comments early on in the investigation that will show you that are still generating impact on the story today, and I believe are preventing his freedom. And it's why the U.S. is still trying to get him extradited for punishment. Remember, the process is the punishment in that case. And the case has come to light due to attorneys for Matt Couch, who was sued by Rich's family for his reporting on this case. successfully getting a judge to order the FBI to release Seth Rich laptops and tape DVD drives in a court case. And guess what? The FBI still appears to be lying and trying to cover up information. Well, Matt's been investigating the Seth Rich murder for 8 years now. He's my guest today to give us an update and enlighten us on the background case. He's the publisher of the DC Patriot and host of the DC After Dark show. And I think he's got another one that's coming on too, but I wasn't able to find the name of it. And we were having some technical issues. Matt, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, if we've got you.
Hey, Colonel, how are you?
Good, man. How are you? First of all, Matt, you've been really open about your health and the loss of your leg and everything. How are things going in that area real quick? If you don't mind
so far so good, progressing. I've got therapy again today here after this show, and just trying to stay after, trying to keep up on the on the training and the health stuff, and and just basically it's a battle right now. Social media, I'm not going to lie to you, it's wearing me out, Colonel. Been discussing taking a long hiatus with my family, just because I'm not sure that the benefit there's a reward to it at this point. I've got one goal, and that's to get Donald J. Trump back in the White House. But as far as my health goes, I'm going to start making that even more of a priority than I have been in the next coming months, and see where that leads me.
Outstanding. We'll get you physically and mentally energized for your physical therapy in this show, because I asked you to come do this show with me after you put out the thread and broke the news on your attorneys getting the judge to order the laptops and the DVDs and some tape drives released about a month ago, I believe it was, because I don't think everybody knows, and as you know, as time goes by, the media, that's the government media, pushes their narrative, and we keep trying to tell the truth and the facts and everything. So every once in a while, we all got to come together on something like the Seth Rich story and just put the facts out again. And you are the person that's investigated, you and your team that's investigated this the most. So I appreciate you coming on. I know it's tough to do, but when I read your thread, you put out a really long thread when the news broke on these laptops and things about the history of this and what you had gone through. Can you just talk a little bit about all of the obstacles that have been thrown in your path and in your way by the government, and then by attorneys probably supported by the government too, and lawsuits and those kind of things? Because it's a pretty horrific list for an American citizen that's a member of the free press, not the government press, to have to face these kinds of things just to put facts out that they uncover about a murder.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've been fighting now for, it's hard to believe, almost 8 years. We've been on this investigation, but there's certain things I can talk about, certain things I can't talk about, in the investigation. But the biggest thing is just the fact that they've done everything at every turn to cover this, this murder investigation up. The real prosecution for Julian Assange rests around, this Seth Rich case, because of the truth and the information that's going to come out from that. And so they've tried to silence everyone from Julian Assange to our team to you name it on this investigation. But, they've used the means of the federal government. They've used, high-powered attorneys. They've used, it's unbelievable. Like they've lied at every turn. The FBI first started out, Colonel, as saying, they'd never investigated the Seth Rich murder. And as we dug into it, it turned out that was obviously a lie. First turn, we ended up finding, let me back up here. So basically, Judicial Watch filed a FOIA request back in like 2018, 19. I can't remember the year at this point. It's been so many years. They didn't even know what they had. And a couple of guys on my team, Full Nelson and Larry Beach, they started digging into the, into these documents from Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch didn't even break the story we did from their own documents because they weren't paying attention. And we found emails between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page about Seth Rich, two of the top FBI brass, that were involved in the Trump Russia hoax. And so basically they were talking via FBI emails not to worry about it, that they would squash it. Literally their own terminologies. We have the article up at dcpatriot.com. And they said they would squash. We have the documents. You can go see it all at dcpatriot.com. After that, we started, Ty Clevenger, Eden Quayton, have some amazing lawyers on my side. They started filing like FOIA lawsuits, FOIA requests. And so with that being said, as that layer unraveled, we had 20,000 pages of documents. They claim, keep in mind, they never investigated it. They said they never investigated it. Now all of a sudden we've got communications between Strzok and Page and 20,000 documents. To date, there's almost 500,000 pages of documents relating to Seth Rich the FBI has. They have his work laptop. They have his personal laptop. They have the DVD and tape drives. They have everything from an investigation they claim they never investigated. And then to make matters worse, now after the judge in Texas, Manzant, the federal judge in East Texas, has ordered them to release the laptops and they have the copies, the hard drives of the laptops, to release that information to our attorneys. After 8 years, the FBI now claims their latest motion is, we didn't realize this was an open murder investigation still. If we release that information, it could jeopardize an open murder case. Folks, they're never going to solve this. They're not trying. And one of the best private investigators that I know on my team, Frank Whalen, who was the head of NYPD homicide for 23 years, Frank said the best way to stifle a murder investigation, if you want to cover something up, is to just do nothing. And because time is disastrous in these situations. And so they know exactly what they're doing. It's kicking the can down the road. It's typical FBI stall tactics, Colonel. And so the longer they can stall, the more they can cover this thing up and sweep it under the rug, like a JFK, for example.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my opening clip, I don't know if you were able to see it while you were getting in position, but, the attorney was being interviewed by OAN 4 years ago that discovered the FBI was covering up and lying about their lack of investigation and those kind of things. I mean, he went on and on and on about it. And now here we are 4 years later. It's been 8 years. You guys do your due diligence. Your attorneys and investigators do the right thing. The judge does the right thing. And the FBI is like, oh, wait a minute. No, it's still an investigation that we're not doing.
They drug the goalpost to midfield.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a continuous playing Lucy with the football, if you remember Charlie Brown and the Peanuts characters. Well, let's go over to the live audience and take a question before we go to the first break. But after that break, we'll see Julian Assange and what triggered a lot of people right after the Rich murder. Let's go ahead and go over to the Spaces audience. Kat and Shell are our hosts over there. We got a question for Matt?
Nobody has their hand up, but wait, I take it back. Rob does. Go ahead, Rob.
This may be a rhetorical question, but is there anybody left in the FBI that has any kind of morals or values? I mean, from the ground level people we see arresting journalists to the upper echelon, is there anybody left in there that stands for us?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the rank and file, honestly, are not terrible people. And I say that from somebody who had them in my living room a few days after January 6th, because I was sitting third row in front of the president at the Ellipse on January 6th as I was invited, and in the VIP section. But what people don't understand is most of those people were Secret Service cleared and things of that nature. But I do believe the rank and file in the FBI, and Colonel can speak to this, 32 years in the military, he knows where I'm going with this. I don't want to literally just castrate and neuter everyone. And there's I don't know how many they have at this point, Colonel, but I think it's close to 50,000 field agents. It's something like it's an astronomical number, but of FBI agents. I don't think the brass and file, they're the rank and file. The top brass, yeah, they're corrupt. You look at the Christopher Wrays, you look at the Andrew McCabe's, you look at the James Comeys, you look at the Pages and the Strzucks. Yeah, they're corrupt. But I think if you look at the people that are actually out in these field offices, I think they've got like 52 or something like that, 56 field offices across the U.S. I think those people genuinely, I think most of those people are trying to do the right thing. But I can't speak for the rank and file, Colonel. I just can't, and I'll yield back to you.
Yeah, I mean, just to add my 2 cents before we go to the break, I interviewed Steve Friend, who's a whistleblower from the FBI, Kyle Seraphin, who's a whistleblower from the FBI, and I mean, the jury is out on the rank and file. I have lost faith in most of the rank and file in the institutions in the United States of America myself, because of what we're seeing from their actions. And I just give you the Steve Baker journalist arrest from last week from the Blaze that's been all over the media, the independent media like us anyway, when they put him in shackles and chains for 4 misdemeanors court appearance. We'll be right back with Matt Couch talking about the Seth Rich, Julian Assange, this whole issue of the FBI continuing to lie and cover up this murder for some reason. It's really strange as to why that is. So thank you, Matt Couch, for joining us today, and we'll dig further into it when we come back, and we'll hear from Assange himself and kind of his comments that triggered a lot of folks in the government media right after this break.
We've learned through the pandemic we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
Superfoodshouse.com. Transform your life today. We have partnered with a superfood manufacturer and offer you a one-stop destination for organic, non-GMO superfoods. At superfoodshouse.com, we offer a premium selection of nutrient-rich superfoods, from the revitalizing protein shakes to the Super Amino 23 protein tablets. These tablets help your body rapidly absorb protein, creating lean muscle and burning fat. Visit superfoodshouse.com right now and seize limited time offers on superfood products. With just a few clicks, you can have these nutritional powerhouses delivered right to your door. Superfoodshouse.com, where wellness meets convenience. Your path to a healthier lifestyle begins here.
This morning, a new interview with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is reigniting conspiracy theories about the death of Democratic National Committee staffer Seth Rich.
Whistleblowers go to significant efforts to get us material and often very significant risks. As a 27-year-old works for the DNC, who was shot in the back, murdered.
Although Assange would not say whether Rich was a WikiLeaks source, the organization is now offering a $20,000 reward.
But was he one of your sources then? I mean,
we don't comment on who our sources
but
are.
why?
It was an unprompted discussion of the 27-year-old voter outreach coordinator who was violently attacked on July 10th near his Washington, D.C. home while chatting on the phone with his girlfriend. His body was found badly beaten with multiple gunshot wounds, described by investigators as a robbery gone wrong. While D.C. police tell ABC News there is no indication that Seth Rich's death is connected to his employment at the DNC, conspiracy theorists suggest Rich may be connected to the tranche of emails leaked by Assange's group just before the Democratic convention. Rich's parents say they welcome the reward and any help catching his killer, but are strongly denying any connection between their son's brutal murder and politics or conspiracy. Writing in a statement, some are attempting to politicize this horrible tragedy, and in their attempts to do so are actually causing more harm than good.
Rob Maness Show here on Patriot.tv Live, and we've got Matt Couch of the DC Patriot and DC After Dark with us because he's been leading a team that's investigated the Seth Rich murder for the last 8 years and has been censored, attacked by hit pieces in other media, especially the government mouthpiece media, has been sued, has just been death threats, has received death threats over this, and they continue to do the right thing in his organization. And just when they get at new facts, they uncover them and they put the facts out there. And that's essentially what he's been doing in an apolitical way, as opposed to what was said on that video clip. Matt, as I said, Assange is really, those comments were about a month after Rich's murder. And that really triggered a whole lot of discussion that continues to this day, didn't it?
Yeah, that was 30 days after his murder on a Dutch TV program when Julian offered the $20,000 reward for Seth Rich's murder. It's the first time and the only time WikiLeaks has ever offered reward money for an investigation or a source. And so, we know the problem is the smoking gun. They've done everything they can to cover it up, Colonel. And there's groups out there that want to just, they want to prove he's a leaker. There's groups that, but my whole goal is honestly just to solve that. I want to know who murdered the kid because I believe he deserves justice in that realm of speaking. If you want to ask yourself this question, ask yourself why the Republicans want nothing to do with this any more than the Democrats want anything to do with it. And it shows the uniparty we have in D.C. There's been zero GOP involvement or oomph or whatever you want to call it to actually want to solve this case. We have a video we put out about 7 years ago saying these same things. Look, if the Republicans have the opportunity to step on the throat of their opponents and they won't do it, what does that tell you about Washington, D.C.? And it's amazing that no one will touch this case. No one. It's the only unsolved Caucasian murder in the District of Columbia in the last 2 decades. The interesting thing is we have a witness who, and she's a big writer. I mean, I'm not going to name her, but I met with her in early spring of 2018 with my team at an underground speakeasy in D.C. Where they do a lot of intel stuff and in front of the White House. And it was a high level meeting. She'd spent a week in the Ecuadorian embassy with Julian Assange, and she told us, she said, I paid him. And and then on top of that, he explained how he was paying sources, which that, of course, we put that information out. And of course that there are certain people, I believe the truth is the truth, Colonel. And I think that, the lack of information and the lack of being loud is what gets a lot of people, I don't know what the word is, clipped, whacked. I mean, there are so many dead bodies around this investigation, and that's not hyperbole. That's not conspiracy. That's facts. You can right. Literally look at the multiple WikiLeaks attorneys dead all around this time frame. You look at Sean Lucas, who was the DNC process server who sued the DNC for fraud, dead 3 weeks after Seth Rich found dead in his bathroom of an alleged fentanyl overdose. His girlfriend, claims he was a vegan and a health nut. She found him face down dead in his bathroom, missing a tooth with a huge gash on his forehead and no blood anywhere in the bathroom. We have that, of course, on recording as well. We've done due diligence, tracking all of this information down. If you believe that, this is all coincidence, which I don't believe in coincidence at this point in my life, it's nonsensical. But we've done everything we can to try to get to the truth. But the real issue is that the other side, our side of the aisle, the conservative side of the aisle, has been absolutely silent and cowardly through this entire ordeal. They shut Sean Hannity down. They've shut Lou Dobbs down. Lou Dobbs literally lost his job at Fox News over this investigation. Right. I don't care what anybody tells you. That's why they fired Lou Dobbs. And so,
and
it's
been
fact.
taken off of sites that I went and looked for stuff that Hannity and Dobbs did, and I think it's all been taken down. Do you think that the prosecution, the U.S. prosecution of Assange, you mentioned it earlier, what makes you think that prosecution is directly because of Seth Rich? I mean, because there's a lot of facts out there around the private Manning release of the classified information that WikiLeaks published. And they're using that as the excuse.
Well, can I get you on the record? Is that a boy or a girl, Private Manning? Is that a boy or a girl, Private Manning?
Private Manning is a man. There's only men and women in this world. That's the way God made us, brother. You got me sidetracked there. But I got
to make you laugh one time on the show.
Manning was tried and convicted and punished somewhat. I mean, Obama let him out early. for giving up classified information. That's what should have happened, folks. You know, if you're going to be a source and you give up classified and you get caught, you should be prosecuted for that because it's against the law. But WikiLeaks and Assange is a publisher and published the information just like the New York Times. The New York Times published the information about the Stuxnet virus from a military source that was later outed and got in trouble. It was a 4-star general. And that wasn't punished. Nobody prosecuted the publisher of the New York Times for putting that information out. So it just doesn't make sense that the U.S. is going after Assange as a publisher of classified information on that excuse. And that's why I asked you, what are the facts that lead you to say, and I agree with you, by the way, I'll just be open about that, that they're continuing this prosecution and punishment of Assange because he's really being punished from the U.S. because of this issue and this set of comments that he made because they think he really is and can reveal some information that they don't want out.
Well, I mean, I believe exactly what you're saying there is correct, but I also want to preface this when you talk about the IC, the intelligence community, and a lot of, you know where I'm going with this, Colonel, the normies, 95% of Americans don't understand what I'm about to say because I get all these folks that are like, oh, well, it's just the liberals that want him silenced. Or it's just the liberals that want to prosecute Assange. I have guys on my own team that were CIA, FBI, Delta guys. It doesn't matter. Assange has no friends in the Pentagon. He has no friends in the intelligence community. And I want to clarify that. So it needs to be said. Nobody's really said it publicly. I'll say it today. It doesn't matter if they lean left or they lean right politically. One thing that the intelligence community has in common is they all want Assange down. They want him brought down, silenced, imprisoned. They feel like he's embarrassed them. They feel like he's led to American lives, being killed, which I believe he has. So on that realm of things, I can understand where they label him as an enemy of the state. This will be unpopular, for me to say this. But I want people on our side of the aisle to understand Assange has no friends. Not on the right, not on the left. And I have found that out as we've continued to try to investigate this case. But I do believe the Seth Rich situation, I believe Seth Rich got more than he intended. I believe he had help. I believe Sean Lucas was possibly a dead man switch for him. Of course, he was killed 3 weeks after Seth Rich. He's the one who, initiated the DNC fraud lawsuit. It's why Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to resign in shame. It's how Donna Brazile became the head of the DNC. We uncovered that, they tried to say he was a low-level staffer. Our team broke this story, I believe it was in late 2018 or late 2019. We broke this story, that Donna Brazile, who was the head of the DNC, and Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., were at the hospital within minutes of Seth Rich's arrival. Now, Colonel, why would the mayor of Washington, D.C. and the head of the DNC show up after a kid who was shot at 4:19 in the morning, who was, quote-unquote, a low-level staffer? You see where I'm going with this, right? I believe they cared about the kid. I believe that they thought threats were. I think I'll just tell you. I said this on another show a couple weeks ago when this thing popped off again. I believe that Donna Brazile truly cared about Seth Rich, and I'll take hell for saying this. I believe that Muriel Bowser is a good friend of Donna Brazile's. I don't like either one of them. Be clear. I want to clarify that. Right. Not friends. They don't like me. I don't like them. They're upset we busted this story open. But the moral of the story is, I think that there were threats. I think people like Donna Brazile and Muriel Bowser were assured that nothing was going to happen to the kid. And I think when it did happen, they were so stunned that they rushed. You see what I'm getting at? I think deep down, they really were concerned for the kid. And I think they were assured by certain higher ups that nothing was going to happen. But when you have David Brox and Robbie Mooks and the Clinton cartel running the DNC, a lot of people don't understand. In 2016, when all this was happening, and when Clinton was running against Trump, the deal with the DNC was the Clinton campaign took over the DNC, or they weren't going to do it. Like literally, they took over. That was their verbiage. It was like, look, you want us to be your nominee? We're running the DNC. Kind of like what you see with Trump doing now, right? With the RNC.
Yeah.
It has to be done if you want your candidate to have a chance to win. Expect you can't have dissenters and defectors in there if you're trying to get a party elected for president. So the Clintons were in full control of the DNC. And then we can go backwards here. There's so much to talk about. This is like a you and I should probably do like a 10-hour documentary on this at some point, Colonel. There's so much to talk about. But you look at CrowdStrike, by the way, ran by Sean Henry and Dmitry Alperovich, two former high FBI brass. Now a multi-billion-dollar company.
Let's hold it right there until after this break, Matt, because we're going to hear from how the Russia hoax came in, and you mentioned the intelligence community, the IC community, and this is another reason why I wanted to do this show with you, because most people don't understand the interplay of the intelligence community, the Department of Justice, and this particular case, my friend, and the Russia hoax especially. So we'll be right back with Matt Couch on Patriot.tv live on the Rob Maness Show. It's getting heated.
Hi neighbor, Pat Boone here. Today, I want to help you find some peace of mind concerning your money. Like it or not, we're all living in a financial war zone. That's right, we're watching our hard-earned dollars get crushed by inflation. In fact, recently inflation reached its highest level in 40 years. And on top of that, cash, which has always represented freedom and privacy, is more and more being replaced by a cashless system. That's right, powerful forces are definitely waging a war against cash. So I'm encouraging you to prepare before it's too late. Call or text the number on the screen for a free report, The Secret War on Cash from Swiss America. Discover how a few simple steps can protect your money as well as your privacy and your peace of mind. So call or text for your free report, The Secret War on Cash, and make sure to mention Pat Boone sent you.
Sounds rolling, all 3 cameras, we're good. Speed.
Is there any regrets that you have in life? I should sit here and say, yeah, I got a lot of regrets. But when I look back on my life and I understand the lives that were lost, I mean, I'm sitting here with you. And I can tell my story.
Former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
He was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
Brilliant military career, serving 33 years.
Why was he being so elusive?
Mike Flynn told the truth and faced life in prison.
For the conspiracy theories that follow the murder of Democratic National Committee staffer Seth Rich, well, it turns out they were part of a disinformation campaign. The Mueller report says the conspiracy was all a lie, orchestrated by WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to cover up his links to the Russian intelligence probe. It's a D.C. murder case, and the fake news and conspiracy theories did a lot of damage to so many people around here. Tonight, some of those people told our Scott Broom the Mueller report ends it all once and for all.
Seth Rich, a Democratic National Committee staffer, was shot in the back July 10, 2016 at Flagler Place Northwest, a short distance from his apartment.
Back with a Fox News alert, a brand new bombshell in the murder of that guy right there.
The case became a sensation as Trump political operatives like Jerome Corsi and Roger Stone promoted a completely fake conspiracy theory that Rich was the source of the Democratic National Committee leaks that sunk the Clinton presidential campaign, and he'd been murdered to shut him up. It was all fake news. Fox was forced to retract one of its stories.
We're not going to stop till I find my son's murderer.
Rich's family were tortured by the lies, and they were harassed online. Robert Mueller's report says it was all a disinformation campaign promoted by WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to cover up the real source of the stolen emails, Russian intelligence. Assange's lies, including a tweet offering a reward in the Rich murder, were designed to obscure the source of the materials that WikiLeaks was releasing, the Mueller report said.
This gives the family of Seth Rich the final solace that they need to put this thing to rest.
Brad Bauman is a former spokesman for Rich's family, who still live in Nebraska.
The human cost, the human toll of this lie stretches from a family that was deprived the ability to grieve their son that was murdered senselessly in the streets of Washington, D.C. It resulted in me receiving death threats. All for what? To protect Russian intelligence? I mean, like, this was insane.
Scott Broom, WUSA 9.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show live on Patriot.tv. And we're talking with the publisher of the DC Patriot, Matt Couch, who's investigated this murder for 8 years with a highly professional investigative team and has a team of attorneys that has to be on his payroll because he's getting attacked in the courts and in the media continuously over this. But he just wants to make sure the facts and the truth come out. Has nothing to do with politics, quite frankly, when you read the information and the facts that they put out. And Matt, that clip right there, I just want to reiterate to everybody, I chose that clip because it is pure government propaganda from the Russia hoax. The thing that we now know was a total hoax that wasted millions of dollars on the Mueller report was a complete fabrication that started out in the Hillary Clinton campaign. And we know that now. But that's the attempt to link Assange, Rich, and the Russians together to continue to put that false propaganda in. I mean, they even had the audacity to call the actual facts fake news.
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on a lot of that, Colonel. Just I can't on that clip. But you know, I can tell you that the Mueller investigation was an absolute farce. There was nothing to it. I mean, you look at the idiots that he indicted. Number one, they're Russians. Number two, they're never going to serve time in an American prison. Number three, they expect you to believe that, you know, when you talk about the tens of billions of dollars that are spent in U.S. elections, that, you know, like $8 million by Russian bot farms is going to affect manipulated election. That's literally what the entire Mueller investigation states. It's how stupid and moronic it is. And Americans, of course, because they believe everything that the Mockingbird mainstream media tells them, believes all this nonsense, hook, line, and sinker. Russia has been proven false 1,000 times over. There was no Russian, collusion. There was no Russian involvement from Don Jr. or Donald Trump or George Papadopoulos or Carter Page. Every one of these people has been vindicated. It's all nonsensical garbage. They even made up this Guccifer nonsense, which that was a whole other story, which we don't have time for, which was also to try to lure you down the Russian nonsensical propaganda roles. Assange didn't have to do any of this. There's plenty of money. WikiLeaks has raised tens of millions of dollars. They didn't need money, Colonel. So for our government to try to spin this like WikiLeaks, like the number one journalist in the world, and our government wants to tell you, oh, he was dying out and he needed attention. So they made up this Seth Rich thing. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we could even tell you, the ways they were paying sources. It's, and it's clever, involved eBay and PayPal of all things, but it's just the fact I went to the House Intelligence Committee in April of 2018 with one of my attorneys, Ty Clevenger. We gave them a ton of information. We never heard back. And keep in mind, the Republicans had control. Devin Nunes was the head of the House Intelligence Committee then. And my point is, we've had every opportunity to have this looked into, but both parties want this thing swept under the rug, and I'll yield back.
Yeah, I'm glad you keep pointing that out because I don't say it enough. Well, we've got a hand up over in the audience on Spaces. Matt, let's go ahead and take that question. I think it's Chief Sands. Go ahead over in Spaces audience.
Hi, yeah, this is Chief Sands. Sorry, I have laryngitis. Just getting over it. But I own JulianAssange.com. Again, I own JulianAssange.com. So I know Matt Couch says he's been, investigating Seth Rich for about 8 years. I've been on this case for Julian Assange for 15 years.
Do you have a question?
15 years, double time. Yeah. Did you guys ever hear WikiLeaks is CIA and killed Seth Rich? Because that's what I believe after 15 years.
No, I've never seen any facts that support that. Matt, do you?
What was the question again? I could hear parts and bits and pieces of it. Something about the CIA and WikiLeaks.
Did WikiLeaks is CIA and had Seth Rich killed or killed Seth Rich? Was the question.
No, there's rumors. There's rumors that WikiLeaks is now controlled by the CIA, but I don't know any evidence that proves that. But I mean, we do know with Seymour Hersh, who is a darling of the left, multiple Pulitzer Prize winner for the New York Times. We have a recording of him from back in 2016, 17. I'm not sure when it is that our team got a recording from Seymour Hersh. And Seymour Hersh says that the Seth Rich murder was a Brennan op, which I believe, because when we were investigating in D.C., there were ATMs he walked by. We talked with the banks, and they had all of the ATMs with cameras had a malware virus that night. They all malfunctioned. So I believe that there's a chance. Seymour Hersh says it was a Brennan op, and his source at the FBI says that the kid got more than he bargained for with the information that he took. And so, is WikiLeaks controlled by the CIA? There's no evidence that shows that whatsoever that anyone has been able to prove at this point in time. But Julian Assange's mom, follows me, and his family and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where I truly don't know. But I don't think that for 1 second that Julian Assange or most of the people at WikiLeaks were involved with the CIA up until now. Could the CIA be running it now? Anything's possible, Colonel. Who knows, right? Okay, so with that being said, when you look at the FBI and the CIA, the government involvement, it's crazy. When you think about this. But yeah, we have no evidence, no conclusive evidence that the CIA is running WikiLeaks whatsoever. But we do know that John Brennan, we know how many times has he been caught up in lies. Who was the director of the CIA? We do know that Seymour Hersh, the Pulitzer Prize winning darling of the New York Times. And keep in mind, this is a liberal. When you talk about Seymour Hersh, it's not a conservative guy that's coming out and saying this information about Seth Rich. And then he's also the guy that did the Nord Stream pipeline story, right? So the same guy that was right about Nord Stream, about the basically our involvement in blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, is also the same guy that kind of leans towards our theory with his information on Seth Rich. I think Seymour Hersh is extremely credible. He's an old school Kennedy Democrat. He's not the kind of he's not the kind of what do you call it? Not the kind of journalist that just makes things up. He's not a clickbait guy. He's a guy who does his research, does his due diligence, puts in tons of work. And so, so when Seymour Hersh says it's a Brennan op, Colonel, and then he's also the same guy that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline story, which the U.S. is super pissed off about, by the way, that he put that story out and blew that up. It's like Putin said to Tucker Carlson when Tucker's like, who blew up the pipeline? And Tucker said, you did. Or Putin said, you did. And Tucker goes, not me. I was busy that day. And Putin thought that was hilarious. I think Seymour Hersh extremely credible. I think he's probably right. But try to go back to what the person asked. To me, we like to try to deal in facts, right? We don't, if we can't prove it, we don't say it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thanks for trying to answer the question from the facts that That's what I'm answering the question for. I'm not the investigator here. I'm the trying to be the journalist and ask you questions to get the facts out, because that's what the story deserves. And quite frankly, that's what Seth Rich and his memory, all of that deserve. He was murdered by somebody. Right. The case should be solved by now, in my opinion. And, I appreciate you bringing up that all of a sudden the cameras that were everywhere. I looked at the map with all the cameras and the path that he would have had to be on. And it's just strange and mysterious. The other question I was going to ask you is, isn't there a policy, before we go to this last break here, about body cameras? Are those available from the police officers that responded and those kind of things?
We were denied that information in our pursuit of justice. They've never released the body cams.
Okay.
I don't.
We got to take our last break and come back. We'll take our last break, Matt, and when we come back, we'll talk about some current events, starting with the Julian Assange extradition hearing that took place just a few weeks ago. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show at Patriot.tv Live with guest Matt Couch.
The markets are getting crazy, and now is the time to protect yourself from economic turmoil. Silver is in the headlines right now and creating lots of excitement as the price of silver is extremely attractive compared to gold. A call to Swiss America gets you the scoop on whether the silver opportunity is for real. What you'll discover will really blow your mind. Today, silver faces a huge shortage due to the rising demand by military, solar, electric cars, and computers, all of which depend on silver. But right now, silver is priced to sell according to worldwide experts. Now, to help you get started, Swiss America is offering beautiful United States Walking Liberty half dollars, issued by the U.S. Mint from 1916 to 1947 and minted in 90% pure silver for a special introductory price. Limit of $250 per customer while supplies last. So call the number on your screen or visit SwissAmerica.com, because now is the time to rediscover silver.
Joining me at the news desk now is Rebecca Walzer of WalzerWealth.com. She has been a regular guest on my TV show, Brennan House Live, for a long time. She's not just an economics expert, but she's an attorney. Rebecca, you have a large firm. How many people work for your firm?
Just about 30, yes.
30. And
yes.
Tell me, how can people prepare for what's coming with the end of the dollar as we know it?
The end of the fiat system as we know it globally. We are moving to hard asset-backed currencies again. Thank the Lord, because fiat is where we get into all the problems. When you have debt-based currency, you have debt-based problems. And the United States, unfortunately, since 2020 has not stopped spending at pandemic levels. This is systemic, and it is unsustainable, and it is coming to an end, especially with the addition of Saudi Arabia and the UAE to the BRICS nations. This is what controls our petrodollar. This is the threat immediately in 2024.
For more information, WalzerWealth.com. WalzerWealth.com. She is not your traditional financial planner. Find out why at WalzerWealth.com.
Two UK judges won't make a decision in Julian Assange's extradition case right away after his hearing came to a close today. Protesters gathered outside of the London courthouse for a second straight day as attorneys for the WikiLeaks founder fought an order for him to be sent to the U.S. on espionage charges. BBC News correspondent Nikki Schiller is outside of the Royal Courts of Justice in London. Nikki, thanks for being here. So break down the arguments in this case.
Yes, good evening, Lana, from London. So Julian Assange and his lawyers argue that this case is politically motivated and that the US is basically doing state retaliation after WikiLeaks published those secret documents in 2010. Julian Assange's lawyers argue that he was exposing criminality, serious criminality, and it was a case of being a journalist and freedom of speech, and that is why they say that he should be allowed to publish those and not face any retaliation. They also argue that his mental health at the moment means that if he is extradited to the United States, he will be at a serious risk of suicide. Indeed, his wife Stella told us that it was a case of life and death for him. They also, in court, his lawyers argued that the CIA, at one point they alleged, had a plot to kill or indeed kidnap him when he was in the Ecuadorian embassy. On the other side, the United States lawyers today in the High Court argued that when Julian Assange published those details, he risked lives and that he should be extradited to face those espionage charges. Now, the reason they argue that they say inside those documents that were published were the confidential names of informants for the US in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, and that by publishing them, he risked those people's lives, and therefore he shouldn't be treated like a normal journalist. They also say that he faces allegations that he conspired with the whistleblower Chelsea Manning to obtain those confidential documents. Now, as you mentioned, throughout the last 2 days, supporters of Julian Assange have been here at the High Court. They've been chanting things like "Free Julian Assange" and "No extradition." And indeed, after the case ended here, they marched to Downing Street in London to demand that the UK government free Julian Assange immediately. Lana.
Nikki, tell us, when do we expect that the judges will actually issue their decision?
Okay, so this is what we call a reserve judgment in this country, Lana, which means that the judges are going away to consider their verdict. Now, they'll look at other documentation and look at the submissions from the two sides. We expect that there may be a ruling in mid-March. Now, if the ruling goes against Julian Assange, his wife Stella told me that they will appeal to the European Court of Human Rights to get an order to stop the plane from taking off here in the United Kingdom. But if that fails, then the law says that within 28 days of that ruling being made, Julian Assange would be on a plane back to face those espionage charges with you in the United States, Lana.
All right, Nikki Schiller, thank you.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show on the Patriot.tv live channel. We are talking with DC Patriot publisher Matt Couch, who has investigated the Seth Rich murder for 8 years and is very familiar with Mr. Assange there. And Matt, by the standards that the U.S. government is going after Assange on, that he might have gotten informants in Afghanistan and Iraq killed, Joe Biden should be under arrest right now and so should General Milley, and all of those leaders that failed in the Afghanistan withdrawal and left all those people there to be killed by the Taliban, including American citizens. That's my opinion on that. And I agree. Assange should be freed. He shouldn't be arrested. He shouldn't have never been arrested and shouldn't be being charged for publishing the information that he published, as any American publisher would not be. So, Matt, there's been a lot of breaking news this morning about different government liars and agencies. I don't know if you've seen it, but Special Prosecutor Hur on the Biden classified docs case has been testifying. And, the man that was Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, committed multiple crimes intentionally, according to her, but he's not being arrested. He's not being indicted. He's not being charged by affidavit or anything, even though he did it as vice president and had no powers to declassify information like the man who is being charged for the same issue, classified documents mishandling, Donald J. Trump is, and had all the power of the only single individual in the United States to declassify anything he wanted without even writing it down. All he has to do is say it. And I say that as somebody that held the highest security clearances in this country that you can have from the age of 17 until I was about 52 years old. So, your thoughts on this whole fiasco, on those Trump charges?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that it's literally the epitome of, like your grandparents would be like, do as I say, not as I do, right? And that's what I see from that one. I want to go backwards real quick, Colonel. You asked me about the body cams. We were told they were misplaced on Seth Rich by the Metro DC Police Department. They said they had misplaced the body cams, but they were still relevant to an open murder investigation if they could find them. That was the verbiage we got there. On Assange, and you look at the Espionage Act, which came out in 1917, which is what they're trying to try him on, which goes into what we see with the mainstream media and how they're trying to, the quote unquote, get Trump type nonsense, right? I mean, it's basically to prevent the support of the United States enemies during wartime. And so the Supreme Court back in 1919 unanimously ruled that the Espionage Act doesn't violate the freedom of speech of those convicted under its provisions. So they know what they're doing here, right? If they use the Espionage Act on you, Colonel, they can eliminate the First Amendment, which is scary when you think about that. But if you look at the people that we've charged with the Espionage Act, there was an Austrian-American socialist congressman, Victor L. Berger, who was the leader of the Socialist Party of America. I mean, we've charged people with this. And Chelsea Manning was one. Julian Assange is another one. But at the same time, I don't know how we're charging non-American citizens with espionage. Do you? How does that work?
No, not at all. I mean, Manning was charged, and appropriately so. But you know what? The Espionage Act is what they're using on President Trump, who was president of the United States. When the documents that were in question were removed, he was still president of the United States. because they were on the airplane with him when he left before noon on January 20th of 2021. It's absolutely incredible. And there's some other incredible stuff breaking this morning, too, that the January 6th Unselect Committee, the biased committee of January 6th, covered up testimony of the Secret Service limo driver so that they could have Cassidy Hutchison, or whatever her name is, with Liz Cheney under her direction, testify that Trump tried to wrestle the steering wheel of the beast and get it in the front seat and everything, and make it look like he was crazed and everything.
You don't think he was?
And the Secret Service driver
diving through the
finally
front
comes
seat
out and says, "No, he didn't do any of that. He didn't do any of that." He said he was a little irritated in his voice when we said, "Sir, we can't take you there because there's violence going on, and we can't put you in that kind of situation." I'm sure it's the verbiage or something similar to it. And then the second thing that that came out on the J6 Unselect Committee is that the Trump assistant that was in the room and heard him tell Mayor Bowser of the District of Columbia, "I recommend and I offer you 10,000 National Guard troops. I'm making them available if you need them. Do you want them?" And she said, "No, absolutely not." The guy that was in the room's testimony, and you remember the Post, the Washington defunct Post, the Compost, gave Trump 4 Pinocchios on the 10,000 National Guard troops number, when in fact he was being a commander in chief and saying, "Look, it looks like there may be violence, especially between my supporters and anti-Trump supporters like Antifa and Black Lives Matter people. We should have this capability readily available and on the scene." That's what I would be thinking about if I was a commander in chief and been briefed on that type of intelligence. That's exactly what a commander in chief would do. But they suppressed that testimony too. What is wrong with Liz Cheney and the Republicans that were putting up with this stuff and actually facilitating it?
When you look at this, Colonel, and you look at the fact that, Liz Cheney has now, there's a lot of people now calling for her arrest and prosecution. And rightfully so, because she covered up information that would easily exonerate President Trump. And so it's crazy to think about this. You look at Adam Kinzinger. He's somewhere looking for a stool big enough so he can get to the top shelf and get his cereal down. But when you look at Adam Kinzinger, you look at Liz Cheney, you look at the corruption. These people, everything that they accuse other people of doing, they're actually doing. They're actually committing real crimes. And all they do is try to divert that and accuse people that aren't committing crimes of doing crimes or making up crimes against them. But when you find out that, we'd heard this for what? It's hard to believe. How long ago was January 6th now? It's insane. I cannot believe we're still talking about this. The only unarmed insurrection in the history of the world. We're arresting truck drivers and grandmas for taking selfies in the rotunda. And don't get me wrong, I've said this many times. I told the FBI agents that were in my living room. If you caused violence, if you broke something, if you assaulted a police officer or a marshal or a staffer, if you put your hands on somebody, you deserve to pay the full penalties of the law. There were idiots among the patriots. There were mob mentality took over. Yes, there were infiltrators. Yes, there were Antifa and BLM people mixed in with feds and everybody else. But at the end of the day, there were still a lot of stupid people who had monkey see, monkey do mentality. Our side's got to admit that. But at the same time, the fact that we're literally still watching and looking at cameras and trying to hunt people down from 3.5 years ago over the only unarmed insurrection in the history of the world, when we've got wars on multiple continents, empty shelves, supply chain issues like you wouldn't believe. We don't even have enough medicines. Our pharmacies are now running out of medicine because we rely on China for that. We have so many issues as a country. We have over 1 million homeless people, 75,000 homeless veterans, a wide open southern border with 1 million people pouring across each month, 500,000 that they'll admit to, as Ben Berkholm says.
Absolutely.
This is what our FBI is doing. We're taking that manpower and focusing on people that might have taken a selfie inside the Capitol instead of securing our borders, fixing our supply chains, stopping the wars on multiple continents. It's sickening when you look at it from an actual real-world perspective, Colonel.
You're absolutely right, Matt, and thank you for joining us today. We are at the end of our time, my friend. At Real Matt Couch on X, at DC Patriot on X. Go follow him. Help support those guys. Support Matt in his effort to get healthy. He needs our help and our prayers. And tomorrow's Whistleblower Wednesday. And I will just add that especially the criminal that shot the Air Force veteran in violation of Capitol Police use of force policy, that dirtbag needs to be held accountable for his January 6th activities. And we will continue to talk about it until he is. I'm Rob Maness on Patriot.tv Live. We'll see you tomorrow on Whistleblower Wednesday.